Hello and welcome to part 2 of the series that I am doing on nervous system regulation. So, today we are discussing how your dysregulated nervous system impacts your marriage and other relationships. And it is really sort of an interesting topic because most people are not really thinking about the energy they're carrying and how it is affecting other people and how other people are feeding off of that energy. And this is something that I talked about in last week's, which is where I started to really become very aware of this, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and started practicing, like really deepening my practice of nervous system regulation. And so today we are going to discuss really how it looks in your relationship and what you can do to start to make some shifts on that. So, if you are watching live, please say hello. If you are watching the replay, let me know replay and feel free to put some comments in the comment section. Any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them. So, if you don't know me, I'm Carrie Cohen. I've been a practicing psychotherapist for 25 years, and I've worked with women, men, and couples. Started my career working with kids, but women, men, and couples for the majority of my career. And now my focus is really on women and couples. And so I help women, sort of equip women with the tools that they need in order to have the most extraordinary relationship with themselves, with their partners, and with their kids. And really just how to balance motherhood, marriage, and career without losing your mind. So, okay. So, the reason why I'm talking about nervous system regulation and marriage is because it is a very important topic when it comes to how we are relating in our relationship. So, we are all wired for connection. Okay. We come into this world wired for connection. And our first most important relationship is the one that we have with our primary caregiver. Our next most important relationship is the one we have with our life partner, the one we choose to spend our life with. And I'm going to touch on co-regulation, but I'm going to do another episode on that and dive deeper into it. But we first learn about co-regulation through our primary caregiver when we're a baby, because we do not have the capacity yet for self-regulation. And so, which starts after the toddler years. So probably when kids become about school age, they start to develop the capacity for self-regulation. But it starts as co-regulation with the parent regulating the baby's emotional states. They're really nervous system states. Okay. And so then as we grow and develop, we develop our own capacity for self-regulation. And then when we're in other relationships, we have co-regulation. So self-regulation first, co-regulation second, which is really how we should be doing it as adults. Okay, so a dysregulated nervous system will actually wreak havoc on your marriage. But the good news is, which I discussed in the first week, is that your brain and your nervous system can actually be retrained to a new default state of calm and ease. And then couples can learn to co-regulate, which can also create a sense of safety and help them really optimize each other, which is one of the big things that I work with all of my couples on. And then we talk about couples who have kids. We talk about parenting from the same lens, because we ultimately want to create this harmony in the household. And we want the couple to be the barometer for how the household runs. And that's how you do that. So basically, what I want to do is I want to just describe to you what a dysregulated nervous system is, what it looks like, so what it is technically, and then what it looks like. And then we're going to talk about some of the ways that it manifests, and then some of the areas that impacts in the relationship and how, and then some things that you can do. And I just want you to remember, though, that the practice of nervous system regulation is an entire practice. It's not just implementing a tool, but it actually starts with awareness. Okay, so a dysregulated nervous system is basically an imbalance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. and it keeps your body in a constant state of fight flight. Now, if you're watching this and you didn't watch part one, I would recommend that you watch part one, because I'm going to be using terminology that might not make sense if you didn't watch my introduction to it. So it's the imbalance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. It's the system is not returning back up to safety or back to ventral vagal, and it's misreading everything as a threat, and so it's keeping you in chronic fight flight mode. And if we think about that and how that is going to impact relationships, when you are constantly in a state of fight flight in your relationship, there's a lot of emotional reactivity, there's a lot of triggers, there's increased irritability, and all of that gets in the way of being able to connect with your partner and your loved ones, your kids. And so some of the things to keep in mind about this is that it could manifest in you feeling very overwhelmed, snapping at your partner, feeling really impatient, having mood swings. Could look like depression or anxiety, irritability, panic, rage, outbursts. So for me, for a long time, I was in this state because I was actually in chronic burnout, literally chronic burnout, because I was in activated sympathetic, like chronic fight flight state. And I was so stressed with the way that with my relationship with work, that it was affecting every other area of my life. And so I would have just enough energy to work all day, and I would come home and I would crash. And that was not helpful for my relationship with my husband or with my daughter. So if you find yourself with some of these symptoms, this is the first place I want you to look. I don't want the first place for you to look to be, well, maybe I'm depressed and I need meds, or maybe I'm anxious and I need meds. I looked there too, because if we don't actually address what the root cause is, then the problem is going to just manifest in other forms. So let me move on, because I do want to keep this to 20 to 25 minutes. Now, what is the cause of a dysregulated nervous system? So we've this unresolved stress responses from the past. And then there's other factors like lifestyle factors. So for me, it was really my relationship to work. I was working very long hours. I was gone from the house 12 hours a day, left before sunrise, didn't come home till after sunset. So that's lifestyle factors is a piece of it. Unresolved stress responses from the past, trauma. And so that's sort of I would say, then there's like biochemical reactions, things going on in your body. And so I want you to think about sort of this dance. It's this dance, this cycle. It's the vicious cycle between stress and disconnection. So what happens is when we get a lot of stress, we are then disconnected from ourselves and from others. So you end up living in a very lonely, isolated state emotionally, which also obviously has a big impact on your marriage. So if we think about stress and disconnection, okay, so a heightened state of stress makes us more reactive, leading to more arguments, more misunderstandings, and a big breakdown in communication, right? So that's sort of one big area that this manifests in marriage. Another one is for people, for women or men, but for women who are stuck in survival mode, it creates a sense of emotional distance from your partner, really making it hard to connect on a deep level. So that's the second way that we might see it. Now, the third way that we're going to see this manifest is in physical symptoms like exhaustion, headaches, insomnia. Of course, those are going to further strain your relationship with your partner because you don't have any energy. I personally resonated with all of these 8-9 years ago. And I felt like I was sort of just in this rabbit hole and I couldn't climb my way out. Therapy didn't help, medication didn't help. I could talk about all I want, exercise, none of that helped until I really found the practice of how to regulate my nervous system, how to understand it, how to map my nervous system, how to begin to work with it so that I could move in sync with it rather than trying to move against it. And that was a big shift for me. So I just want to touch a little bit on how dysregulation affects your connection with yourself because for me and all of my work, I think of a two-sided coin of relationships. All of my work that I do with every single client and myself boils down to this one two-sided coin, which is your relationship to yourself on one side and your relationship to the other, whoever that is on the other side. So we're talking about marriage. I want to talk about how this manifests in relationship with yourself. So if you are someone who's walking around with a dysregulated nervous system, you are chronically in fight flight, or you're oscillating between fight flight and shutdown, and you rarely spend time at the top of your ladder in a regulated state, here's some of the things that you're going to experience yourself. Is that you're going to have difficulty expressing your emotions because it's going to be really hard to be able to tap into them because your body is so activated. You're also going to have difficulty expressing your needs. So when our body's activated, the thinking brain is offline. We don't have access to the rational thinking brain. So it's very hard to communicate in that way. You're also going to feel overwhelmed by intense emotions during conflict. So, which means that all conflicts are going to be heightened, internal conflicts and conflict with the other. The other thing is that when you're in an activated state, it's very hard to actually manage all other daily stressors that are going on. And it's also very hard to communicate. So this is going to impact how you're dealing with yourself and trying to bring yourself back to a state of regulation or safety, and how you're communicating with others. And in a dysregulated state, there's a heightened sensitivity. So you're hypersensitive or react strongly to perceived threats. So if we think about this for a moment, if you're in a very grounded, regulated state, which is top of the ladder, and a stressor comes in, it's going to be manageable because you're in a very regulated state, unless it's a major stressor. But let's just say cumulative stressors. Okay. So because they're little, there's stressors every day. So if you're at the top of your ladder and you get a little stressor, you sort of dip down, but then you come back up. If you're in sympathetic activation and you get a stressor coming in, you don't have any buffer. So it is going to land in a much more potent way than it otherwise would if you were in a regulated state. Okay, so let's talk about how this is gonna. Let's think about this. Okay, so in your marriage, in your relationship. So if we think about communication breakdowns, so if someone has a dysregulated nervous system, they have difficulty expressing their needs and communicating their emotions, right? So it's hard to put your feelings into words, which means that when you're trying to describe to your partner something that you're stressed about or frustrated with, you can't communicate to them. Okay, so that's a big barrier. And because there's a heightened sensitivity, they might say something to you that will that you might be triggered by, or that you might get overly reactive with, that wouldn't ordinarily happen if you were in a regulated state. And also, you might be walking around with more anxiety, more depression, and more fear. So your system is going to be more sensitive and more hypervigilant, sort of like looking for things. And when we're in that state, our ability to really connect deeply, which requires vulnerability, is going to be compromised because the safety alarms are on, right? It's like the alarm system is on and it's looking in a heightened way. So when you are coming from a place like this, and when I work with my clients, I give them a whole menu of regulation resources, and we really work to add to that, because if you've heard me talk, you'd hear me say that your nervous system is as unique as your fingerprints. So what works for me doesn't work for you, but I give everyone sort of a list of a menu of regulation resources to start with, and then they cross off the ones that don't work, and we have a way to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then they add the ones that they know work for them. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit right now about some general ones for you to do. So let's just say you come home from work and you're in a heightened state, and you know you're going to greet your partner at the door. So on your way home, it's very important to do a couple of things to really regulate and ground yourself. And there's a few things that you could do. You could do a breathing exercise. You could do box breathing, which is 4 count, 4 count, 4 count, 4 count. So it's a 4 count inhale, a 4 count hold, a 4 count exhale, and a 4 count hold. When you start breathing like that and you activate that, you are activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to deactivate the sympathetic or the fight flight system. Because they operate like a gas pedal and a brake pedal, they both can't be activated at the same time. So you're going to activate parasympathetic and deactivate sympathetic by doing that. So that's one thing. You could also practice some mindfulness. So as you're driving home, you could do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you could see, 4 things you can smell, 4 things you could probably touch, 3 things you could hear, 2 things you could smell, 1 thing you could taste, because that's going to ground you. Now, if you come home and you can also sit in the driveway and you can do a couple of these things. Now, let's just say you don't have time to do that when you get home. In the car, when you get home, what you could do is you could just say to your partner, okay, I just need a few minutes to decompress. And that might mean I have a treadmill here. I might go for a walk on my treadmill. I might spin on my spin bike. I might go for a walk outside. I might go do a meditation. I might put some music on and do a dance. It depends on what my nervous system is needing. But doing something to bring yourself back up to the top of the ladder before you're going to engage with the people in your household. Okay, so if you do nothing but this one strategy that I'm giving you, that will make the world of difference. So bring yourself back up to the top of the ladder, back to ventral vagal before you're going to engage with anyone. And now, if we talk about reconnecting with your partner, I'm going to give you just a few little tools that you could do that will pave the way for some self-regulation. So sitting down and having a conversation and practicing active listening, which is really where you're just taking in and receiving what your partner is saying. You're letting it land, and then you're responding based on what they shared with you, okay, rather than being reactive. Scheduling connection time with your partner, eye contact, close proximity, really utilizing each other's availability of grounding to be able to co-regulate and ground yourself. And then if we think about sort of small acts of kindness or daily gestures, ways to show appreciation or affection, these definitely raise they raise your nervous system back into safety, back into anchored, because when we think about a safe nervous system practice, and we think about other nervous systems that are safe also. So we want to be around safe nervous systems, which are nervous systems that are resilient, they're adaptable, they bounce back, they're grounded, they're regulated, they're not like volatile. They don't go sort of like off the deep end really abruptly with no notice. So being a safe nervous system and having a safe nervous system around you is very important. So I'm going to wrap this up here. And this is video 2. And I'm probably going to do one more where I'm going to talk about co-regulation and triggers. I'm going to put it together so I don't stretch this out anymore. And I also want you to know that next week, I'm going to be sharing an opportunity for you, which is going to be a beautiful experience to really be able to learn very hands-on action steps on how to get yourself in charge of your emotional states. So I sit with clients and they say, I feel like I have no control over my reactions. And other people tell me that how you react is a choice. Now, I will say that's true with one caveat. How you react is a choice. It's only a choice if you have other options. Many people who are reacting feel like they have no other options, so they react with the default. When you join this experience with me, you are going to have a whole slew of options available to you, and you will be in the position of having a choice of how you want to respond, which is a beautiful thing, I must tell you. So that is it. I will see you next week. Questions, comments, put them below. Would love to hear from you. And feel free to follow me on all my social platforms because this is the kind of stuff that I talk about on the regular.